The Philadelphia Eagles this past Sunday had a convincing win over the Denver Broncos. The Philadelphia 76ers are on a 5-game losing streak, and we're talking Flyers. All of that coming to you on Sports Talk Philadelphia. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sports Talk Philadelphia. I'm your host, Cale Flieger, and we have a full desk this week with panelists. I have my co-producer, Aiden Tasinski. Aiden, how are we doing?
Doing well.
We have Tyler Small back for another week. Tyler?
Happy to be here.
And Mike Holden.
What's up? How we doing?
Good. We're going to start with the Philadelphia Eagles, and they had a dominating win over the Denver Broncos, 30-13 this past Sunday. The Eagles' offense was clicking on all cylinders on Sunday as Jalen Hurts looked very impressive, especially in that first half of that game. 16-23, 178 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. Did have an interception, but also had 53 yards rushing. Jordan Howard and Boston Scott, another impressive week for both running backs. Both had around 80 yards rushing. And Devontae Smith, the rookie, just arguably his best performance of the year. 4 catches, 66 yards, and 2 touchdowns, one of them being on his former Alabama teammate Patrick Surtain. The Eagles, a total of 214 rushing yards, and another week where the Eagles consistently ran the ball and ran it for over 150 yards in a game, and good things usually happen for the Eagles. So I want to open up to you guys. How impressive was this offensive performance for the Eagles this past Sunday?
Yeah, I think the offensive performance, looking at it, like you touched on it, Cale, that they ran the ball a lot. I've been talking about the running backs a lot on the show, especially because they weren't running the ball earlier in the season. Now they are. Biggest thing that came out to me about this game is that 7 different players caught a pass. That's not something you usually typically see with a rookie quarterback, especially someone that you have questions about like Jalen Hurts. So the fact that they're passing the ball not only to the tight ends, they're finally getting the ball to Devontae Smith. They're starting to pass it around to other guys as well. I think that's going to help the offense as well, especially as it comes closer to the end of the season.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think the fact that you can see this rushing attack and how balanced they are as a team. You can talk about balance and just distributing the ball left to right to all the receivers that you talk about, but 164 rushing yards out of your running backs and 178 through the air. That's a balanced attack, especially when you come into a game with this Broncos defense. They're not known for much, but the one thing they are known for is limiting passing. They have yet to allow a 300-yard passer this season. So having that ground attack has been great. I think Jordan Howard has been the key factor for this success these past couple of weeks. A hard-nosed rusher. He rushes for 83 yards, 41 yards before contact, 42 after contact. He's been impressive, and then you have an elusive back with Scott in the backfield. It's almost as if you don't want Miles Sanders to come back to break up some of this chemistry in the running back room.
Yeah, I mean, I think everything you guys are saying is, because of the development that we're seeing with Hurts and Nick Sirianni. I mean, Hurts, that first half was probably, I think I said this last week about his second half with the Chargers, but I think that first half this week was probably the best he's looked. He had 2 touchdowns. He should have 3 that Quez Watkins dropped. That one interception was, it was not a good play, but, besides that, he was accurate. And like Aiden was saying, he's looking all around the field. And I think that's just kind of, progression with him. And that's kind of what we want to see. And, Sirianni, his balanced offense the past 3 weeks, it's looking good. He's, he's silencing the doubters. And Devonta Smith is just a superstar in the making. So I'm liking what I'm seeing. And, we'll see how that carries over next week.
Yeah, the offense was definitely impressive this past Sunday, but the defense was just as impressive as they shut the Denver Broncos down to just 13 points for the entire game. Broncos running backs we talked about last week, they're very good. Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams. The Eagles shut them down for 93 yards total between the 2 backs. And the Eagles' entire second half only allowed 3 points. Opening up again, the defense has been up and down this season. I mean, they're allowing 40, 35 points for a stretch of 4 games. But then you see recently that they're allowing these teams to score around in the mid-10s, and that's great defensive football.
Yeah, no, 100%. Biggest thing that came out to me about this game is that the Broncos had 4 possessions of 0 or negative yards in that game. Mm-hmm. So that really showed me that the defense was getting up onto the quarterback, really forcing Teddy Bridgewater to make poor mistakes or get sacked. Other thing, too, it really looked like that Atlanta game where they only allowed 6 points, where that's what it really reminded me of. So I do think that if they keep playing that style of football, they can be really successful defensively. It just doesn't happen every single game, which is really frustrating because we know they can do that. They just haven't at this point.
Yeah, and I think that if you look at this defensive unit, we talk about the rushing yards and how they're able to limit them to only under 100 yards, but you also talk about the pressure that they were bringing to Teddy Bridgewater in the backfield. 6 different players got 6 quarterback hits. There were 9 total hurry-ups. It's been incredible so far that they were able to kind of turn it around despite how many injury problems they've run into so far, how many blocking schemes have seemed to really confuse them, and we haven't seen a lot of production out of the pass attack early. So I think that is a really good step forward, especially for the youth that you see in this line, to potentially get some new pass rushers that can make a difference in the game.
Yeah, I mean, that pressure is what we were kind of, saying last week, because they could not get any pressure on Justin Herbert at all. And, they only had 1 sack, but they were getting to Teddy Bridgewater, and, they were playing that bend but don't break, and it worked, and just great red zone defense. And I think 2 players that stand out to me, Devion Taylor and, TJ Edwards. Taylor is a 3rd-round pick last year, and he's turning into, a caliber starting linebacker, and so is TJ Edwards, so much better than, Eric Wilson and Alex Singleton. So, that's a good thing on defense because, linebacker has always been a problem for us. So hopefully they can, be in the future, in this Eagles defense.
Yeah, another defensive player for the Eagles that shined on Sunday was Darius Slay for another week. He has had an impressive season overall, but even a more impressive game this past week against the Broncos. Darius Slay, Week 10 versus the Broncos, had 1 catch allowed for -2 yards, and he also had a fumble recovery that ended up being an 86-yard touchdown for the Eagles. Going back to Slay's 2021 stats as a total through 10 weeks, 32 catches allowed, 271 yards allowed. That's 4th fewest in the NFL. 2 interceptions and 2 touchdowns. The last player to have 2 defensive touchdowns in a season was Seth Joyner of the Eagles back in the 90s. So just overall, a very impressive season for Darius Slay. After last year, he played well, but it wasn't up to the potential that we knew he could play at. And this year, he's just shown us he is a true cornerback 1.
No, he definitely is, and it's good to see because we really haven't had that in the Eagles in a long time. One of the last guys that comes to mind to me was Asante Samuel, maybe Ronald Darby when he was healthy. But this is really good to see that we now have that lockdown corner. It's definitely made the defense a lot better. It makes other guys need to step up, though, as well, because quarterbacks aren't really starting to go after him as much as they were earlier in the season. But Steve Nelson, I will have to say as well, has done a much better job than I thought he would when he was struggling a bit in the first couple of games.
Yeah, and I think that it really comes to how much of a crapshoot it is for the ability to maintain a D-back 1. When you look at some of the short lifespans that going to your wide receiver 1, lock them down, the ability to change the offense altogether and take away their best weapon. The Broncos have several great weapons, of course, and we've seen strides from them offensively, but you really couldn't see any of that. And that was the key catalyst to why it felt like it was a bigger deficit in that game than it actually was. So that ability to actually have somebody that can lock down and seem as though Slay isn't going to be slowing down anytime soon since they made the trade is a huge factor for this team, that they could kind of rely on that and try and get some quarterbacks under his wing because he has a lot of knowledge to give the rest of the youth.
Yeah, I mean, he's that anchor for that secondary. He's that cornerback 1 that we've been searching for, forever. And, he's a little older, but so we're going to have to look probably to the draft for a future, cornerback 1. But for right now, he's, the cornerback that we traded for. And he's playing like the Pro Bowl he did with the Lions. So I'm glad he's with us and playing well. And, hopefully he can, keep this up.
Yeah, overall, just a great game for the Philadelphia Eagles this past Sunday. Getting back in the win column and looking good for actually a wild card spot as we're going to dive into the NFC East standings right now. The Cowboys at the top of the division still at 7-2. The Eagles at 4-6. Giants and Washington both at 3-6. And the Eagles' schedule is actually very favorable towards the Eagles as they play the Saints this upcoming week. They play the Jets, but then the rest are division games as you have 2 against the New York Giants, 2 against the Washington football team, and then your last week against Dallas. So open up for you guys again. How likely is it the Eagles are going to get a wild card spot this year?
I think very likely that it is. In their last 7 games, they're only playing 2 opponents that have over a 500 record, one of them being the Saints, who's only a game over 500. So I think as long as they keep playing the way they are now, can beat up on those really bad opponents in the NFC East at the end of the season, we can definitely make the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree. I think you have to reevaluate when you see that there's 7 teams that can make it out of each side of the divisions. And with that being said, I think it kind of leaves the door open for everyone, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, the Eagles, like I said, this upcoming Sunday, go on to face the New Orleans Saints, who are 5-4 in the season, but did lose their quarterback, Jameis Winston, a few weeks ago to a torn ACL. So the Eagles are looking for their first victory at home this season, which is kind of a shocker because the Eagles are usually a very good home team. They are 0-4 this season. The Saints starting quarterback for this week, since Jameis Winston is out, is Trevor Siemian, and he is not very impressive. So what are the keys for this week for the Eagles to win? I definitely think it is get after Trevor Siemian and make him throw the ball away and throw interceptions. I mean, I knew Alvin Kamara was out last week, but he'll probably be back this week, so that's definitely a player to watch out for.
Yeah, no, 100%. I definitely think that we just need to keep doing what we did last week. Put pressure on the quarterback, make turnovers happen, play bounce offense will be good.
Yeah, I think that it's going to be limiting Taysom Hill. They've kind of done a two-quarterback sort of look when Simeon needs to get the true passing looks, and Taysom Hill is such a Swiss Army knife, so making sure that he is brought in and kept back in the backfield.
Yeah, they're playing another great run defense. The Saints have the best run defense in the league, and they're going to have to replicate what they did last year with Hurts and Sanders. They both got 100+ last year against the Saints, and they're going to have to do that. And the home crowd is going to have to bring it so they can finally get a win this season at home.
Yeah, this is a very important game for the Eagles this upcoming Sunday. Hopefully they get in the win column and win 2 consecutive games for the first time this season. So looking good for the Eagles, and now we're going to move on to the Philadelphia 76ers, who have not looked so good. The Sixers are 0-5 in their past 5 games on a 5-game losing skid. Just overall not looking good for the Sixers. They did lose to the Raptors, Pacers, and Jazz recently. The 5-game losing streak, those teams are considered playoff teams, so you can't be too worried about that. And you also have Joel Embiid and Matisse Thybulle still on the COVID list. They should be coming back soon because it has been over 10 days now. So are you guys worried about this Sixers team losing 5 in a row?
Yeah, not at all. I think that, like you said, having 2 of your best players out, Artis, who is one of our best, he is, without Ben Simmons, our best defender, and having Embiid just out, you don't have anyone to lock down the paint, and that's clearly been a problem while both of them have been out. I do think that once they come back, once we get our core guys together, I think that this team could put a good run together after this losing streak.
Yeah, I don't worry much about it either, just for the simple fact that they have been competitive games for the most part. I mean, if it were all games like the Jazz where they just weren't in it for any portion of the game, then I'd be concerned because that shows how top-heavy this team is. But when you look at some of the players that have stepped up over the span, Tyrese Maxey, 24 points per game over the 5-game losing streak. Harris drops 21 per game. Andre Drummond, 10 points per game, 16 rebounds. So he's really taking Embiid's spot, at least defensively and on the board. So I think there's been a lot of players that have stepped up proactively and have made some almost strides without the top-heavy team that they usually are.
Yeah, I'm not worried. I'm just more worried about, how much ground they're going to lose with, Embiid out. They got to get him back soon because, this Eastern Conference is competitive this year, and you don't want to get, so far down where, when you get to the playoffs, you're a 5-6 seed and don't have that home court advantage. So I'm not worried in the long run. I'm just more worried. I want to get everybody back. I do want Embiid healthy. So, if we can get a healthy Embiid back, then I'll be happy.
Yeah, the Sixers, they do need to bounce back in the win column just because even when Embiid and Matisse Thybulle are back, they're going to be rusty. I mean, they haven't played basketball for over 10 days now, so it's going to take a little bit to get that team chemistry back to where it was. But Sixers, they should be fine, and they should be at the top of that Eastern Conference by the end of the season. So some new news on Ben Simmons. He is still on the 76ers as of now. The Sixers have been finding Ben Simmons over the past road trip just because he didn't show up. But Ben has been seen practicing at St. Joseph's University on multiple occasions, actually practicing with their college basketball team. So is it frustrating to you guys that Ben Simmons is going to work out with the college team in Philly, but he can't go in the gym with his own team that he's getting paid millions for?
I mean, a little bit. I'm kind of just glad he's doing anything basketball-wise and he's not in Hollywood just like hanging out with celebrities and stuff. But on a more serious note, I really hope that they can just trade him at this point. He's clearly has no interest in being on the team, even outside of basketball. So the sooner we get rid of him, honestly, I think the better.
You know what? Sometimes you got to go back to your roots. And let's look back to when Ben Simmons was at LSU, dominating over terrible opponents. Shout out St. Joe's. And just it doesn't replicate what he actually needs to do. I'm glad he's shooting a basketball. I'm glad he won't be rusty if he ever does come back for this team. But it's kind of a slap in the face that you're doing it right there. You can't travel with the team and actually get some looks with the main squad.
Yeah, I mean, this man has to get out of Philly. I mean, this is probably one of the most frustrating things, as a Philly fan, dealing with. I mean, just him and Rich Paul saying that the Sixers are making everything worse. I mean, he only is making this a problem after they started finding him. So they just need to trade him, take the best offer, and just get him out of Philly so we can, look to a championship run.
Yeah, this has definitely turned into a nightmare for the whole entire Sixers organization, as a report came out recently that they are split on the decision that half of them want to work things out with Ben and the half just want to cut ties. So it'll definitely be interesting to see what happens over the next few weeks. Now we're going to move to the Eastern Conference standings. As the Sixers last week were actually, I think they were the number 3 seed, and they dropped all the way down to 8 in the matter of a week. They are now 8-7 with that 5-game losing streak. A lot of basketball to be played yet, though. But where do you guys view the Sixers as still? Do you still view them as a top 3 team, or?
Yeah, I think that they're maybe not top 3. I think definitely top 5. Biggest thing, they just need to get healthy. You have your top 3 guys, Seth Curry, I keep doing that, Embiid and Harris. They haven't played together since October 30th. That's almost half a month where they haven't played basketball together. And that's your key 3 guys leading this team. So I think the moment that you get those guys back, you get Thibault back on the defensive end, this can be a really, really good team.
Yeah, and I think it all comes down to the playoffs, because when you look at this team, they can be a top 3 team in the regular season, any given season, obviously, but it all comes to having that chemistry once you get to the next stage, and you have to make those decisions. And that's what we've seen in years past with injuries, not getting that experience to play with each other. I think it's going to pay dividends.
Yeah, I mean, it just depends how long, Embiid's out, and we can get everybody, together and playing and get that chemistry back. And just, what happens with Ben. I mean, just like I said, take the best offer and, get players who can help contribute to a playoff run. And don't do that too late where, you do it at the trade deadline and then you only have 2 months before the playoffs to get everybody, situated. That's why I want him gone now and, get players who are willing to play for this team in this city and, gear up for a championship run.
Yeah, the Sixers, in the beginning of the season, when they all were healthy, which seems like an eternity ago, they looked amazing. I mean, they looked like a really good team that had a lot of chemistry, and you could see that the youth of that team has a lot of chemistry. You'd have to imagine that getting, like Mike has been saying, you get some sort of return for Ben Simmons, they're going to be a dramatically better team because you have a superstar sitting on the bench. But that is all we have for the Sixers this week. We are going to take a quick break, and then we're going to talk about some Flyers.
Unlike other health concerns, mental illness is not always easy to see.
Third line, please.
DEPRESSION.
Mental illness doesn't show up on a scale.
Bipolar?
Sorting out a mental health concern is not something to attempt on your own.
Anxiety. I thought so.
Like many health conditions, help for mental illness takes professional diagnosis and treatment. And the sooner you seek treatment, the better.
Look at that. 6,000 steps and PTSD.
If you or a loved one has a mental health concern, don't go it alone. Find out what to do. For 24-hour free and confidential information and treatment referral, call 1-800-662-HELP. Learn more at samhsa.gov/support.
Hello, and we're back from that break. Now we're going to talk about some Flyers that we took a week off of, but we're back with the Flyers now. And I also want to bring on, we have a new panelist on for this, Shane Nolan. How you doing, Shane?
Doing good.
So we're going to jump right into the Flyers. The Flyers are now 8-4-2 on the season. They are in 4th place in the Metropolitan Division, but they had a big injury with Ryan Ellis to his lower body that now apparently he may be out till January 1st, which is a big loss for the Flyers. So what is your guys' reaction to how the Flyers have played so far this season, and also chip in a little bit on that Ryan Ellis injury?
Yeah, so biggest thing for the Flyers, this has been a complete up and down season. They had a great win against the Carolina Hurricanes, who we said the last time we talked about the Flyers was the best team in the NHL. And then between that, they have a bad loss to Dallas, 5-3, and then you also get shut out by Toronto as well. So I don't really know how to feel about the Flyers yet. I think that they're still, they definitely look a lot better than they did last year, which is saying something positive, I guess. But I really hope that they can keep some consistency, not just keep win-loss, win-loss.
Yeah, and the lack of consistency, you got to say that comes to the youth in those back lines. And that's just kind of what you're going to see from anyone that's getting used to the early parts of an NHL season and the long haul that it is. But I think what we've seen from the veterans so far this season offensively and from the goaltender duo has been the key catalyst for this year. I mean, Claude Giroux is having a phenomenal season with 12 points. Couturier is finally getting some national recognition for being a point-per-game player that he has been throughout a long stretch in the orange and black. So I think there's a lot of factors to it, but I think it comes down to the youth and just getting them used to an NHL haul.
Yeah, and with the defense, I mean, even though Ellis is injured, he's out 4 to 6 weeks, but you have Provorov, who's looked good all season. Ristolainen has finally been what you expect him to be, that tough defenseman, hits people along the boards. And then you also have Justin Braun, who has been a big surprise this season. He has been joining the rush. He's been great defensively, and he has a goal and 10 assists this season.
Now, the Flyers, like you guys said, have had a lot of impressive players throughout the course of this season so far. Do you guys have an MVP for the Flyers throughout the first, 13 games of the season?
Yeah, at this point, I think I am going to have to go with Claude Giroux. Obviously, they're thinking about finding his replacement in Joel Farabee, but like Tyler, as you say, he scored 12 points. I don't think anyone really expected that offensive output from him, especially with his role decreasing. So for me, that would have to be who it is Claude Giroux.
I got to go with Couturier again, not to beat a dead horse, but just the fact that he's such a great physical center that kind of dictates it both defensively and offensively in transition. And the point production that he has been putting up so far this season is very on par for who he is, but you see it time and time again when he misses time or when he takes a day off, that there is a huge difference that you see top to bottom from this team.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Carter Hart. He was the biggest question mark coming into this season, and right now he ranks as the 6th best goalie inside the league. He has a goals against average of .219 and a save percentage of .935, and he just looks so much better this season, better than his 2019 season also. He's just quicker. He's more aggressive, coming out to the top of the paint a lot and everything. So for me, it's Carter Hart.
The Flyers, they have been kind of impressive to start this season, but do you think the Flyers are going to make a playoff appearance this year?
I do think so. They always do this weird thing where they make the playoffs one year, next year they don't, and they make it back again. I think last year was just a really bad year. I think with COVID, there was a few cases for them. Playing 56 games is just a lot harder than playing a full 82 slate. So I do think that this is a playoff team.
Yeah, unless there's a pause in the middle of the season at the hottest stretch for this team like there was last year, we're going to see this team in the playoffs, and I wonder what they'll be able to do once they get there. I still think a lot of question marks have to be answered for that to happen, but we'll wait and see.
Yeah, I think they're going to be a playoff team this year. I mean, they finally have Kevin Hayes back, and he has 2 points in 2 games, an assist in his first game, and he had a goal the other night in his second game. So that just makes the team that much better down the middle at center. So.
Yeah, overall, the Flyers, they've had an impressive season so far. They look to continue it in the upcoming weeks and hopefully have a bounce-back year and come back in the playoffs because everyone loves Philadelphia playoff hockey. So hopefully that comes back. Take a look at the standings right there. They are 4th in the Metropolitan. Oh, last 6 games, actually, my bad. Those are the Flyers' last 6 games. But yeah, we're going to move on to Fast 5 now. This week in college basketball, Aiden Tuczynski.
Yes, so there's been a lot of upsets early on. The biggest one coming last night when George Mason beat number 20 Maryland. But there's some more news out of the A-10. Loyola Chicago has announced that they're leaving the conference that they were in to join the A-10. Obviously, some big news. They did have a Final Four run in 2018, had a Sweet 16 run last year, beating the number 1 team, Illinois, to get there. So this is just going to make this conference so much better with basketball. There is some questions about UMass maybe leaving for football reasons. So this is just going to make this conference so much better. I'm so glad that they are leaving their conference, which has had some historically very good teams. But to come to the A-10, it's going to definitely bring up the caliber of basketball. And it's just good for them to get national recognition as well.
Next question we're going to go to Tyler for this one. The best NFL team through the first 10 weeks of the season.
I think you look at this NFC, and it is so loaded. We have the Cowboys, of course, as we talk about. The Arizona Cardinals have taken a little bit of a step back with injuries. It's got to be the Green Bay Packers. And with so much coming around them before the season, with Aaron Rodgers, even mid-season, with all the chaos that has gone on, they still continue to put together a quality product. They shut out the Seahawks, who Seahawks aren't who they usually are in form, but they've been a key defensive unit. And the fact that we haven't really talked about Jair Alexander so far this year and how good he is has been just a key of how deep they are, 11 men.
Next question, we're going to go back to Aiden. Early MVP for the NFL through the first 10 weeks of the season.
Yeah, I think looking through it, there's definitely some questions up there. I'm still going to go with Tom Brady like we did last week. Obviously, the Bucs took a bit of took a step back with that loss to Washington. But he's still been such a clear front runner up till this point in the season. I do think that the Bucs will bounce back. Historically, Tom Brady's also struggled in the month of November, so I do think that come December, come for that playoff push, he will definitely be the leader for the Bucs.
Next, we're going to do an early Super Bowl matchup, and I'm going to take this one. For the NFC, I'm going to take the Green Bay Packers. I just feel like their offense and what Aaron Rodgers does for that team is you can't compare to what he does for that team. You have Devontae Adams, who that connection that him and Rodgers have is something really special, and they've never made the Super Bowl together, but I expect that to change this upcoming season. In the AFC, I'm going to have to go with the Tennessee Titans. I feel like they just played very impressive football as late. They do have Derrick Henry on the IR with a foot injury, but he will be coming back towards the end of the season. But they do have enough offensive firepower with Julio Jones, A.J. Brown, and when Ryan Tannehill's playing well, they're a very good football team. And also their defense has been stepping up in the past 3 weeks. They had 2 touchdowns in the past 3 weeks. So just an impressive overall performance by the Tennessee Titans. So I believe it's going to be the Packers versus the Titans in the Super Bowl this year. Next, we're going to go to so tonight is the National League MVP announcement, and hopefully for us Phillies fans, it's Bryce Harper. But Mike Schmidt is actually presenting the National League MVP award. So we go around the table for this one. Is it a hint that it's Bryce Harper? Huh?
I think it's got to be. If you have Juan Soto go up with Mike Schmidt giving out this award, I think that would just be a straight-up embarrassment for Major League Baseball. I do think that Harper also had one of the best seasons for Phillies in recent history. I understand Juan Soto had a great month of September, but I do think that this award has to go to Bryce Harper.
Yeah, it has to go to Bryce Harper, and he has to give it credit to Fernando Tatis and Juan Soto being his finalists that both didn't make the playoffs either, so that storyline can go away. I mean, he led the league in doubles, in slugging, in OPS, and weighted runs created plus. He is the full-fledged candidate, and they would not do that with Mike Schmidt if he wasn't getting the award.
Yeah, I mean, he carried this team this season. I mean, they wouldn't be anywhere close fighting for a playoff spot for the division for the last game of the last series in the season. And as you said, he led the league in doubles, OPS, and so yeah, he's my MVP.
Yeah, Mike Schmidt did say 2 weeks ago that he does believe Bryce Harper should win the National League MVP. So I think it's kind of a slap in the face to Mike Schmidt if you have him announce it. It's not his boy Bryce Harper. So we're hoping that we have another MVP in town for this upcoming season, but we'll find out tonight. That's all we have for Sports Talk Philadelphia today. I want to thank you guys for coming out and watching. And don't forget to follow us on our social media, Twitter and Instagram at Sports Talk LTV. And that's all we have for you guys, and we'll see you guys next week with more updates.